A black attacker versus Asian victim in New York in broad daylight, and nobody would like to help.
Community activists on hand to support two women who believe that attackers spit on them because they're Asian.
Hi, good day. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing fine today. And before I proceed with our topic for today, I'd like you to know that I'll be changing my channel name to a more appropriate channel name. And if you've probably seen my videos previously, you know that my channel name is Uncensored Asian, which I think is something that we need to change this time. So today I'll be renaming my channel to Anti-PC Asian. So anti-PC means anti-political correctness Asian. So I'm not a politically correct person. So for Filipinos who have probably heard this term, political correctness, PC is not about being, polite, about kind, about friendly. It's all about submission to the powers that be. So we don't have this concept yet, or in the Philippines. What I mean to say is that this is not popular yet in the Philippines. So the term or words political correctness, I believe that Filipinos probably take it literally. So it's not about being politically correct or being correct in political, way or sense. So political correctness is a concept invented and popularized and promoted, practiced by American and Western liberals, the leftists, the progressives, etc., because they know that this is a weapon. Okay, political correctness is a weapon that they can use to subdue or to defeat their opponents and to establish their own totalitarian model or utopia. And for those who have been following American and Western politics, you probably know that political correctness is all about political power. It's all about totalitarian dictatorship in the West in the name of being nice, in the name of being, polite or being politically correct. But you don't know that this is actually about power. It's about gaining power through cultural warfare. So this is a cultural warfare weapon that American Democrats and liberals have been using in order to defeat or to silence their opponents, in order to win the political game and culture war in the United States, for example. So we have the LGBTQ issues, the gender issues in the West, the Black Lives Matter. Basically, that is the best illustration or summary that I can give you about why I'm renaming my channel to Anti-PC Asians. And let's proceed to our topic for today. And we all know that the alleged killer of George Floyd, I'm still gonna use the word alleged, okay, despite the fact that the jury in Minnesota found Derek Chauvin. Again, Derek Chauvin is George Floyd's killer. The jury in Minnesota found Derek Chauvin to have been guilty on all charges. Okay, and we've seen so far online on Twitter that the liberal leaders like Pelosi, Maxine Waters. Pelosi, by the way, is America's House Speaker. Okay, she's the Speaker of the House, the third most powerful man or woman in the United States, including Maxine Waters. She is also, like Pelosi, a representative from California, and AOC or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and many liberals, white and black liberals, have celebrated this conviction, or the findings by the jury that Derek Chauvin, again, George Floyd's alleged killer, was guilty on all charges filed against him. Okay, but this is all about racial warfare. Again, this is about PC or political correctness. Again, I said earlier that political correctness or PC is the best weapon being used by American and Western progressives or leftists or liberals against their political opponents. It's a good thing that the leftists in this country, the media, and I don't know, communists probably, have not yet adopted this warfare tactic because political correctness is very powerful. So, if, for example, the revolutionary communists in the Philippines, led or being led allegedly by Jose Maria Sisson, if they are waging what we call bloody revolution against the national government, against the current regime, or what we call status quo in the Philippines, American leftists, progressives, liberals, and communists are waging cultural warfare in the United States with the use of political correctness as their main weapon. So the umbrella is political correctness. The tactics they're using are, one of them is critical theory, okay? That's one of the weapons under the arsenal of political correctness. And we have this gender issue, etc. But that's going to be another issue because today we will be reacting to this violence being waged by some people, one particular, okay, group of people or racial group of people in the United States. So we all know that we have this anti-Asian racism and hate in the United States, and unfortunately it's not being amplified by America's liberal fake news media because they've been focused on the case of George Floyd and the trial or hearings of Derek Chauvin case over the past few months or weeks. And of course, we know that they used this case of George Floyd, the death of George Floyd, in order to defeat Donald Trump. And in fact, let me just show you before we're gonna react to the videos of Asians being beaten, Asians being, being beaten, being harassed, being violently punched or sucker punched by some Americans, okay? I'm gonna tell you about that after this. Some Americans that, we all know that these have been happening, except that American liberal media have not been reporting and talking about the main perpetrators. So let's proceed to that. But before that, I'm gonna show you Nancy Pelosi. Again, Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House of Representatives in the United States. She's the third most powerful person in America. So we have this woman.
Thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice.
She's thanking George Floyd. If you don't know the background of Mr. George Floyd, he's a repeat offender. He's a recidivist, a repeat criminal who was harassing a young black store clerk. Okay, I've seen that video. He harassed that young black man after being caught to have been using a counterfeit $20 bill, and that's when he reported George Floyd to the authorities. So it's all started with one phone call by that young black man, harassed and violently bullied by George Floyd, a criminal, a black criminal. And George Floyd is being used by American liberal media as their weapon against their enemies, okay? And they're trying to pass him off as a saint when he's a repeat offender. He's a hardened criminal who went to prison multiple times, and he's a drug user. And according to testimonies in court, George Floyd was high that very moment that he was being arrested, and he was being arrested by the cops. Okay, he was high on, I don't know, I think it's fentanyl or some illegal substance. Okay, but he was definitely high on illegal drugs or substances that very moment. And also he was COVID positive. So he's the only COVID positive. George Floyd basically is the only COVID positive person who died and was not reported to have been a COVID death by American health authorities or CDC. I don't know. But, you know, if he probably died that day without being arrested or without the confrontation with the cops, he would have been declared as a COVID positive death by authorities in Minnesota, right? So again, let's get back to this.
But because of you, and because of thousands, millions of people around the world who came out for justice.
Only your fellow morons in America are thanking the death of a black criminal, you know, because you use his death in order to defeat Donald Trump via a fraudulent election. We all know that. All right, now let's forget about this woman because she's nothing but a corrupt, you know, one of the most corrupt politicians in the United States. She's actually worse than any corrupt politician in the Philippines. The only reason why she's not being exposed is because the liberal media don't want to expose her.
We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Jury foreperson.
So we all know that despite the guilty verdict against Derek Chauvin, President Joe Biden and his fellow Democrats, corrupt and racist Democrats in the United States, still said, no, this is not enough. And because of that, a lot of Democrats and liberals and blacks still protested in the aftermath of Derek Chauvin's guilty verdict by Minneapolis, Minnesota jury.